Yeah, so I'm here with Greg Good. Greg invented the GRCS, and he is friends with Kevin, and this is where he assembles them. This is Greg. Thanks for having us.
Hey,
again.
welcome.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if you just show us around a little bit.
Sure. Well, Kevin and I got to know each other, wow, you were like number 4 or something?
Yeah, number
One of the
4.
very earliest adopters of the GRCS, so I don't know, Kevin saw the light early. And actually, the guy who bought serial number 1, John Olson from Hugo, Minnesota, was the tree guy I always wanted to be. He bought serial number 1 in November of 1998. And I'm just shipping, I just shipped serial number 5,906 this afternoon. So it took almost 24 years to get to that point. But anyhow, this is where we assemble with GRCSs. We don't do any of the welding here. The first ones we actually did, I had a good friend who was a terrific welder, so we welded the first batch up here. But then when people actually started buying them, we had to find a shop to do it. And fortunately, there's a really good custom manufacturing company in Heartland, 10 minutes down the road, that does the welding fabrication for me. And that company is Schoberg Tool and Manufacturing. And the winches, we get in batches from Harkin, 100 at a time. And then the plates are also made by Schoberg on a water jet. So we get those in batches of 100. These are mounting plates. The main mount plate, we get those in batches of 100. But this is a basic winch base plate. So I actually make this little key. It's called my winch service tool. The hardest part about opening a winch up is trying to loosen the handle socket screw without having something to hold the drum. So there's the service tool. Winch comes apart. Oops. 5mm Allen key. Take the stripper arm off. Drum comes off, and then the skirt comes off as well. This one feels a little bit tight. Most of the time, we just add grease to these gears here, these 3 gears, and spin them around, and that'll make sure we got enough lubrication on the interior gears. This one I'm gonna actually take apart because there's something that feels a little extra tight. I should be able to spin this big low-speed gear a lot easier than it. Sometimes something just doesn't feel quite right, so then we have to go dig a little deeper into this thing.
Looks like you've done this about 6,000 times.
Yeah. This particular model of the winch, they started supplying around 2010. So the vast majority of GRCSs out there have this. It's called the radial.
Yeah, and how many do you sell?
Last year we delivered 685 for 2021. We had orders for about 750, but we couldn't get enough parts at the end of the year, so. The plates all get stamped with a serial number using a stamp set like this. My highest serial number is
What's that?
He's got to check the number.
59. This one will be 5942.
5942.
Oh, I screwed that one up. I didn't turn the 6 over. It's supposed to be a 9. Just added that one. Added that one out.
It'll buff out.
These hold up really well, although I've got one guy in California I've had to send him 2 sets of bearings for the last couple of years because they're letting these pieces run like 200 feet.
Yeah,
and
they're getting hot.
they're getting real hot. So let's see if I can do this right this time. Take 2. All right. So I'm not going to get put on like this. And when we're really doing it, we usually do like 6 at a time. I'll have one guy taking them apart and lubing them, another guy laying them out putting them on the plate.
So you're saying, so Greg owns a tree service, and when it's below 0, he'll bring his guys in here, and this place turns into a factory.
Yeah, it's a factory all the time. The guys actually call it China. Yeah. They'll come in from a job and I'll be here. They'll say, "How was it in China today?" And then we'll have a crappy day and then we'll all be in China.
Yeah. It sounds like a tree crew.
Yeah.
So my guys are
What year did you say you started your tree company?
1983.
1983. And then GRCS number 1 was 1998? The first one you sold?
I built the first one for a job we couldn't get a crane to, and we had to get this dead silver maple down over a house with a tile roof, and the only way to go was up and away. And fortunately, behind that silver maple were 2 really tall red oaks that had enough meat high enough so we could climb up and set some rigging points to get some decent pick angles. But then we had to find a way to pick. And so I got the first winch on a Thursday. And then that Saturday, my welder friend came over and I was cutting out steel and he was welding it together. Went to Northern Hydraulics and brought one of those strap winches and a strap and a bar. And on Monday we did the tree removal and it worked incredibly well. I thought to myself, I'm never going to another tree job without some mechanical advantage again.
Yeah.
Where you got a rigging job. And but on the first job we had a lot of problems with the rope crossing over. And, and we're having to worry about where to aim the rope on the drum when you're lowering. Right. So then we started playing around with fair leads and tried to make it as simple as possible. And with the pigtails now that we have on each side and the incoming fair lead above the winch that keeps the rope pinned to the inside of the drum, made it pretty user friendly, and it completely eliminated the crossover problem. So. And we weren't going to lose a wrap off the end of the drum and lose our load. But then I had to, so I used it for about a year and then collaborated with other small tree companies. Like there's a good friend of mine, Jerry Smith, up in Jackson, Wisconsin, just south of West Bend. And he always had a small crew, and sometimes we'd collaborate on big jobs. And I'd pull that out on bigger jobs, or on a couple jobs with Jerry and another guy, and they both said, "Wow, we'd be interested in buying one of those if you ever made one." But so when you get to that point, it's like, well, then you got to have testing and insurance and all that stuff. So then it was the second half of '97 and most of '98 before we had anything we could think about selling.
So it took that long just to get legal?
We did a lot of testing. We built a couple prototypes and took them to the Milwaukee School of Engineering. They've got a really cool test lab where they break stuff for the U.S. Army.
Right.
They had these, when we were there, they had these big wire rope slings that the U.S. Army uses when they go recover tanks from a battlefield after the treads are blown off. These were tow straps for pulling tanks. And they were breaking those in that lab. They had this blast wall in the lab with a glass about this thick, so when all the engineers would stand behind the blast wall. So anyhow, we built this stand with a log in it, and we strapped had an elm stump we put in there and bolted it to this stand. And the stand had a table like this milling machine, except a much larger one with T-slots in it. So I had this elm stump and I bored all the way down through it. Then we had some long rods and bolted it with tool fixtures to that stand and put our winch on with the mount. And then MSOE had a way to push on the winch with a hydraulic cylinder that they could precisely measure the force with. And we machined a saddle that pinned to their hydraulic cylinder, so it pushed on the winch drum. It was as wide as the rope contact points on or area on the drum, and went from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. So we pushed from underneath. And we got to like 23,200 pounds, and we heard a little, so we stopped. And then we took it all apart, and we found that what popped was this bolt, the bottom bolt, holding which sheared off. So we took things apart and changed it out, torqued it up, put another test on it. Got to within about 200 pounds of the first time, popped again, same bolt, did it a couple more times. And we were always within a couple 100 pounds of that 22,800, 23,000. So I asked the engineer there, hey, what's the shear load at 90 degrees of this? We were using grade 8. They were SAE bolts, 3/8. These are 8 millimeter, 10.9s. They're a little bit stronger. And he goes, oh, yeah, it's about 29,000 pounds at 90 degrees. So, but nothing else failed. And so we figured that was a pretty good test of that. We couldn't shock load test it, unfortunately. So, and before I could get insurance, we had to prove that these things could take a shock load. So we went out, and I had, with the bucket truck, I had a bunch of oak wilt victims, big red oaks, in a little pocket. And we had already taken the tops off, so we did some crazy negative rigging where we were taking 12-foot pieces of oak and pushing them off, and we just had the rope snubbed off at the base on the winch, and we repeatedly broke 3/4 inch rigging lines. Just
Wow.
I spent a lot of money on rope that day, and then we took the winch back to Harkin, and they took it all apart and checked it all out. Because one of the big problems with trying to sell this thing was to convince Harkin that we weren't going to get sued and put them out of business. So
Because this is a sailboat winch, right?
yeah. And this one is it's a modified version. The first ones we used were straight off the sailboat, and they were made a little bit differently. I think they were probably made a little bit better.
Like my number 4.
Like your number 4. Well, and then we started using, yours was a 44. Then we started using the chrome 46s, which were a little bigger than yours. And they were an aluminum bronze alloy inside. This is an aluminum casting. And the aluminum bronze, I think, wear longer. I don't think they're any stronger, but they had all metal bearings inside. They had a big cast stripper arm instead of this stamped piece, and but they were too expensive to build, so Harkin phased them out, like everything. It's like old cars were built out of really thick steel, and well, anyhow. But so they came up with this radial winch model in 2009, and said, "This is what you got." But the first radial winches had they had plastic inside for the stripper arm support. This is a stripper arm support. This one's made out of billet aluminum. And the plastic ones, I said, they aren't going to take shock loading. They said, oh yeah, we've tested them. I said, I don't think you've tested them the way I've tested them. So anyhow, they built a few, and we shipped a few, and they broke. So we recalled them all, and Harkin started building this billet aluminum stripper arm support, which is really bulletproof. So all the plastic is out of the guts of this one, except for these bearings, which, unless you're a really extreme guy somewhere in California. And that guy actually started using his bollard for really long,
Yeah.
long descents of big pieces. And he just sticks an ice pack in and puts it in and saves. Imagine melting like a 400-foot rope on a job. That would really ruin your day, I think. Take all the fun, all the profit out of your job. So anyhow, when we're putting these guys together, we use these great 10.9 8mm cap heads, cap screws, the lock washer, and with the thickness of everything in here, we just shoot these down. And then after we torque them, it's about 35 foot-pounds. Max torque for that bolt. We're just about a half a thread from being beyond flush. So it's a really nice solid situation for holding. And nobody's ever blown one of these off of a plate. Unless they dropped a giant log right on it. I've had a couple guys do that. We service quite a few of these now with almost 6,000 of them out in the field. Guys send them in periodically. And we did yours, I think, last year. And there's very little that we can't repair. And all the parts still are available for this. The parts for the older ones are getting scarcer. And I bought a whole bunch. Whenever something becomes available, I buy as much of it as I can. So I have a bunch of parts for the old ones. So we service quite a few, and almost everything can be fixed. An old winch can get kind of growly because the teeth here, this is the rack that does the final drive. This is the pinion. The pinion, and if somebody's really overloaded it, like I had a guy send a brand new winch. He'd had it for a week, and it was really growly. He said, I don't know what we did. This thing is a piece of junk. And so he sent it back, and the pinion there was a tooth broken out of it. And all the teeth were bent a little bit, and every tooth in this rack was pushed over. I mean, noticeably, all the way around. So I called him up and I said, how big an extension did you put on the handle? And there's this silent, pregnant pause on the other end of the line while I was trying to think up an answer. And he said, I don't think it was too much. I said, let's go. These are set up, they come with a 10-inch handle made to be used by one guy. And there's plenty of power if you do it that way. And there's no reason to have two guys on a handle. I've been sued once by some guys out in Virginia. That was about 2005. And they had one that they put on a tree to pull another tree over. And it was the original mount. It had the side fair leads on it. And they mounted it facing, they mounted it, and they were coming in through one of the side fair leads. Right. But they didn't tighten the strap. So as they were cranking, the winch started going around the tree, so the end of the winch was facing the tree. And then they had two guys on the handle and two guys bouncing on the rope. They said that in the deposition. And the guy who was doing the cutting, it was a big red maple they were trying to pull over. And when he hadn't gotten anywhere near his hinge yet. So instead of just pre-tensioning the tree and telling the guys to get out of the way until he had cut to his hinge and saw things starting to open so they could pull a little more, he just had him, just keep pulling. And so they unloaded the fair lead finally failed, and the drum was end loaded. So the drum popped off with the handle stuck in it. And a guy got like 3 stitches in his forehead. And like, he got a big settlement for that. So, and my insurance then went through the roof because that's been the one and only claim in 24 years of people using the GRCS. So.
You can only
anyhow.
put so many warning labels on things, you know.
And I put, you know,
coffee is
I put
hot.
very few label, you know, wind the rope this way.
Yeah.
And it's made for people that have been around doing tree, you know, been around a tree before and a rope and understand a little bit about physics and forces. So,
You put a block above the GRCS.
yep,
Have it come straight down to the tool
locks it in.
rather than pull it
And
around.
if you
the
really
tree.
want to lock it in, I mean, we make this visor plate that about 10% of the people that buy GRCSs get one of these. So you can,
Yeah, Kevin bought me one of those. I don't know how to use it.
And I ship them without instructions. I have a picture on my phone that I send a lot of guys as well. I got this thing, but I can't figure out how it goes on. Well, Jacob, you're gonna make everybody in America really happy right now. So we back the bolts off a little bit. The visor's gonna go right over the top. And you'll see this plate in the back fits right in the hole. It's got to match right in the hole flush. And all you're gonna do is tighten these up finger tight, evenly on both sides. And that'll lock it in. And then when you wanna, if you're on a tree you're gonna remove and it's got a big taper on the bottom and you can't get a good bite with the strap. So if you're gonna do a shock load, the thing's gonna fly up. Instead of cutting a big block out of the tree, you can just make one shallow saw curve. And then stick this in the kerf.
That's a great idea.
And then put the strap on and away you go. But before you make this horizontal saw curve, I always tell guys take your saw and go like a plunge cut. And if your plunge cut goes, you're okay to do this. But if your plunge cut goes, then you better rethink your whole rigging plan because you got a really hazardous tree. So
Yeah.
we do 5 at a time usually. It's because it kind of fits on the bench. So they start out like this. We lay out the donuts, shoot the donuts on with a screw gun, flip the thing over, and then these pigtail pivot pins get coated with anti-seize, and they go in here. And then the little set screws that hold the pigtail pivot pin in place also get anti-seize because I don't want to have to drill one out when I got to fix this thing if it gets really smacked. We send a fair amount of these out because there's so many out in the field now, and guys mash them with logs and stuff. Because when they're working, they have the pigtails like this all the time, and all you got to do is pull the pin. Flop it out of the way until you need it. And guys don't do that. It's like, and it's a pain in the neck to wind the rope around the drum when you're loading it up and getting ready to rig if those are in the way. And it's like, why wouldn't you flip them out of the way? But guys do that. And I see guys all the time, they'll say, oh, I got some broken parts on my winch. I said, well, just send me a picture to my phone. And guys will have the winch still in the mount. And I said, why do you do that? The winch comes out of the mount so you don't have to carry all the weight at once. Oh, we just leave it like that all the time. Well, then you got to handle like almost 70 pounds all at one time. We designed it so you wouldn't have to be an animal. So.
Right.
Anyhow.
Yeah, I may or may not be one of those guys.
Well, you're young.
But I'm not now.
You're young. So then, yeah.
Not now that you made me feel stupid.
Pigtail pivot pins go in. The wing plate will go in on this side. This side stays open, but the pigtails, everything goes on. And you end up with a finished product. And I've got a couple over here. Rack ready to ship. So this is how they're, these got to get inspected one more time before they get shipped. So check them, make sure there's only should be like a thread and a half showing here. So we get enough bite on the screw to hold the donuts on. These should both function, have the same amount of drag on them and no wobble, so I got to do a little adjusting there to take the wobble out. Make sure we've got the pins in everywhere. And we check this with a pin one more time to make sure we're not sending something a guy can't assemble. So that goes in a box in the bottom, along with a bollard. So when you get this thing, you've got to assemble it yourself, which means you just pull this cotter pin that's just got a little bend in it so you can pop it out of there. It says grease me, so people grease this pin before they put it in there. Any kind of grease will do. And pin it together. And you're down the road. And we made this hole for two reasons: to make the thing lighter, and also so you can carry it. You can carry it here, or you can carry it through here.
If the bollard's out.
Yeah, if the bollard's out, if the winch is out, and then the winch.
Yeah, it's all coming together now. This has been a very
The
educational.
winch we carry with the handle in it. The handle locks in the winch, so you can grab the winch in one hand. My guys will grab this with one hand, the winch, and the bar with the other hand. You can have both of them, and then just go where you want to go.
This has been very educational for me. Yeah, thanks for showing us around. That was really cool.
So what kind of work were you guys doing this week so far?
Well, we had 2 GRCSs yesterday on a big silver maple removal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had the third one 2 blocks away.
Oh, cool.
On a walnut. So we were using 3.
We're using them, yeah.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, it's the best rigging device, other than heavy machinery, that you can get for tree work.
Yeah.
It really is. It's so versatile. So, good for you coming up with that. It really helped a lot of people out. But yeah, thanks again. I'm gonna shut the video off. But thanks, Greg.
How long you sticking around?